Good evening, everyone. Great to have you back. The month of October. Sure, National Hockey League has begun, basketball's about to start, NFL is in full swing, but nothing compares to baseball in the month of October. That's why tonight, in our Pretenders and Contenders segment, Jesse Feret, web radio host and insider, joins me to talk about the Kansas City Royals, as well as the Montreal Expos. Are they really for real? Can we bring a team back here? Also, on our Four Down segment, Omar Hussein, senior writer on RBTL Sports, joins us to talk about Peyton Manning. Is he the greatest quarterback of all time? As always, we invite you to join the conversation at facebook.com/RBTL Sports, as well as on Twitter at RBTL Sports. It's time to read between the lines. The way the 49ers defense have been playing, it's safe to say that Peyton Manning will become the all-time TD king and surpass Brett Favre's 506 touchdowns. This week on our Four Down segment, we break down Peyton Manning 4 different ways, and we ask, is he the greatest quarterback of all time? We, of course, invite you to join the conversation at facebook.com/RBTL Sports, as well as on Twitter at RBTL Sports. It's a great pleasure to welcome this man right here, Jesse Feret, web radio host, as well as an insider. Great to return you the favor. I did your show, now you do mine.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Great studio. I'm used to radio, so this is great.
Great. Well, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Also want to welcome a special welcome to our senior writer, Omar Hussein. Great to have you on the show and give you some opportunity to voice your opinions. We always see your articles on the RBTLsports.com website. Great to have you, and thanks for doing this.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
And last but not least, the outspoken David Hurley, RBTL contributor, my co-host for the next 36 weeks. I look forward to a great debate with you. Great to have you back.
Glad to be back.
Gentlemen, if the notifications on my Martian smartwatch are any indication of how polarizing this subject is, I think we're in for a great debate. I want to read you guys one of the tweets that just came in, and it says, Peyton Manning's 500 TDs don't add up to Eli's 2 rings. A little bit harsh when you think about it. Start with you, Omar. What do you think?
Absolutely, I agree with that. I mean, when it comes to accomplishments, championships are king, and he doesn't stack up when it comes to that.
Jesse?
I mean, it really depends, though. I mean, like, you know, sure, you look at the championships and everything, but I mean, Peyton Manning he's been great everywhere he's been. I mean, obviously, you know, Indiana, Denver, but every team he's with, he always ends up having that great core of receivers. Now, you know, Demaryius Thomas and even Emmanuel Sanders, he's using him all over the place.
But do the rings count? I mean, he brings up a great point. Well, is it all about the rings? David?
It is all about the rings. And I mean, we compare the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and we talk about Joe Montana. We even talk about Tom Brady, who's been his rival during this whole era. Peyton Manning doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry. I mean, look at the divisional playoff games that he's been in. He's lost 8 divisional playoff games. And what about
all the personal stats, though, as a quarterback?
That's fantastic. Dan Marino's
got them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and Dan Marino share one of the most spectacular stats, 51 game-winning drives. But what did the people say about Dan Marino?
Yeah, but then if we use your logic, right? If we go based on the rings, Brad Johnson has 1. Dan Marino doesn't. I mean, so what does that say? Is that enough for you just in terms of rings? Just in terms of saying that because he hasn't gone to the next level,
Dan
he's not that type of quarterback?
Dan Marino, for me, is not one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Exactly.
Not because he was one of the greatest regular season passing quarterbacks. The statistics show it. He's the one who revolutionized the NFL the way we watch it today now. It's no longer a running game, it's a passing game, which has helped Peyton has done.
Is that enough, though? Is that enough to say, I mean, if you take a look, I agree with you in terms of where he's gone. Don't forget, he's done great in 2 teams. He's brought 2 teams to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And that's something that needs to be commended. Not only that, but in terms of a tactician, in terms of being able to play this game from a mental and physical standpoint, Peyton Manning has been unbelievable wherever he's gone. He holds all of the records, and not to count, 13 games won on average over the course of his career. Right. Where does consistency stand? I mean, you got to give the guy something with regards to consistency.
He is one of the top guys, but think about it. He's had Emmanuel Sanders, now we're talking in Denver, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas, and now you go back to his Indianapolis days, he had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, 2 Hall of Fame wide receivers.
But Joe Montana never had the team.
Joe Montana did have the team.
So then...
But Joe Montana still won those games. Peyton Manning hasn't won those games. He's been to the Super Bowl 3 times, and he's won once. And who did he beat? Rex Grossman. Rex Grossman isn't known to be the NFL starting quarterback as a rival in a Super Bowl game.
Where do you put Tom Brady?
Tom Brady's at the top of the list for me. 3 Super Bowl rings, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. The relationship that he has with Bill Belichick, it's phenomenal for me.
I think there's also, in terms of how over the course of your career consistency plays a big point. I brought it up earlier before. I do think that rings matter, but ultimately at the end of the day, when you see him do what he's been able to do with the Broncos, he literally changed the face of that team overnight. Is that enough? I mean, is that enough for you to consider him one of the great? If he's not the greatest of all time, who is for you?
He definitely is one of the greatest of all time. Joe Montana, for me, is the greatest of all time. When you go to the Super Bowl 4 times and you win 4 times and 3 Super Bowl MVPs at that, and you should have had a 4th one. They gave it to Jerry Rice with that late comeback touchdown, but it should have been Joe Montana. So he should have been 4 for 4 or 4 Super Bowl MVPs, which speaks for itself. It's quite impressive.
I think you got to put Peyton Manning in a way that he put the Denver Broncos back on the map, right? I mean, he came in after the huge injury, and he was still able to put up all the numbers. Sure, he's got the great receivers that I mentioned earlier and that you mentioned as well. But at the same time, I mean, he's still got to have that eagle eye vision. He's still got to get it down the field, find the right guy, utilize all his receivers, and he's doing that. He's not going to one guy. He's finding ways to get it done.
I just find it selfish for someone to say, especially with a guy as established as Peyton Manning, to say that after he holds every personal record, I mean, every record you can humanly think about with regards to quarterback, he has it. But because he doesn't have the ring, because he doesn't have the wins, because he doesn't have the 3-4 rings, how can we debate that? How can we not say that game in, game out, season in, season out, he's been an unbelievable quarterback.
It is. It's a team game. And again, I know we give him a lot of flack. And I mean, even in Indianapolis, if it wasn't for Mike Vanderjagt missing that field goal, and in Denver his first year, if it wasn't for Raheem Moore making that dumb play against the Pittsburgh Steelers, they might have still been in it. But
Well, I mean, he put Denver back on the map, and what better candidate than Peyton Manning to follow up in John Elway's footsteps? I think that's something that he needs to be commended upon. But at the end of the day, there's a fine line in between being great and being the greatest, and I think that's what the difference is for Peyton Manning.
But by the time Tom Brady's done, I know we touched up a little bit on Tom Brady, and he's got to be part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Where does he rack up? If we were to number him from 1 to 5, clearly, the consensus here is he's not number 1. If he's not number 1, where do you put him on the all-time list? Start with you, Jesse.
Tough call. I mean, he could be anywhere within that top 5. I mean, a lot of people could even argue he's not there, but I think that would be ridiculous. I mean, again, we look about Peyton Manning, and he's got all the records and everything. Tom Brady does have the 3 rings, and everyone's going to look at that too. So now, he's played with great teams. He's been with Belichick and everything, and everybody loves that dynamic duo. And everybody was freaking out when they started off this season poorly.
And they're sitting 4-2. I mean, talk about pressing the panic
they play in the
button.
AFC East. Let's not forget they play in the AFC East. It's not
you
the
don't see
greatest
that kind of
division
reaction with any other team, though.
Right, absolutely.
But sitting at 4-2, nobody's criticizing the fact of the end of a dynasty, end of an era after you sing 4-2.
The thing is when you're talking about that, you're talking about the comparisons with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And when you're looking at the wide receiver weapons Tom Brady's had compared to Peyton Manning, you can't compare the two. I mean, the one season that that Tom Brady had a wide receiver in Randy Moss. Randy Moss holds the touchdown record with 23 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns that season. Peyton Manning has broken that record last season with 55 passing, broke Tom Brady's 51.
Yeah.
But that one season that Tom Brady had somebody, he actually did something very, very spectacular, and he hasn't had a wide receiver since.
Let's put it this way. Last 2 minutes of the game, you're down by 7 points. Who do you want? Tom Brady or Peyton Manning?
Oh, I even throw in Eli Manning for that sake.
I
throw him in the mix.
I'll take Tom Brady any day of the week, and I'm a
there you go.
big,
I think that settles the debate right there.
Patriots.
Well, we'll leave it at that after the break. We're switching gears a little bit. We're talking some baseball. We know you love your baseball, so we'll have a chance of talking about the Kansas City Royals as well as Montreal. Are they a pretender, contender? But before we do that, I want to extend a personal invitation to the mayor of Montreal, Denis Coderre. I know you're a big baseball fan. We'd love to have you on the panel to discuss your plans for Montreal baseball. You say you have an open door policy? So do we. We'll reach out to you. Coming up after the break, the Pretender Contender segment is up next. Don't go anywhere. The month of October, it is a great month. If you're a baseball fan, and on this week's Pretender Contender segment, we talk about the Montreal Expos as well as the Kansas City Royals. Are they pretenders or contenders? We invite you, of course, to join us on our social networks at facebook.com/RBTL Sports, as well as our Twitter feed at RBTL Sports. On a side note, since we went to break, I have received quite a few notifications about the Martian smartwatch. We're giving 5 away. Visit us on our social networks for more information. All right, gentlemen, welcome back. Jesse Feret, Omar Hussein, David Hurley. We're talking about the Kansas City Royals. Pretender or contender? I'll start with you.
I think they're contenders. I mean, this is a team that have been surprising everybody all the way up to the point where they are now in the playoffs, and they're just, you know, they're doing well. It's a small ball kind of team, right? When you're a small market team, you got to manufacture your runs. You can't just rely on a guy to hit all the home runs who's getting paid $30 million, you know, a season. And this team has just somehow, day in and day out, proven that they could make it to the highest of stages and contend. So, full-on contender.
Do you think that they have, I mean, they've surprised up to now, but are they a contender to win the World Series? Can they go all the way?
I disagree with Jesse here. I mean, they're pretenders for sure. At this point, they do a lot of things well. They play small ball and everything, but people forget that in the playoffs, what saved them was the long ball. And they hit the least amount of home runs during the regular season. For some reason, like you said, somehow they're finding a way to hit these home runs, but I think the bubble will burst eventually.
The thing is, they also have the most stolen bases in the majors this season. You get a guy get on first base, you get another guy sac fly him over to second, he steals third, next thing you know, sac fly brings him in. So these guys are manufacturing runs just every single game. They have the least amount of home runs. They had 93 home runs, right?
I think they are contenders, and going along the same lines as what you said, we saw it in the first round of the playoffs against Oakland, when Dyson was on first base in the 8th inning, or the 9th inning, and he got from first to third in less than one at bat.
Yeah, but you got to remember, we're talking about the World Series. We're talking about two teams, St. Louis Cards, the Giants. They do
and an all-Missouri, it could be.
An all-Missouri World Series.
World Series, it
and
could be.
How great would it be for the Kansas City Royals to stick it to the St. Louis Cards finally, the perennial contenders against the perennial losers, so to speak.
You got the Cardinals and the Giants and the teams that are always in the NLCS, it seems. That's why this year I find the American League is just fascinating, because usually you'll always see the Red Sox, you see the Tigers, you see the Yankees. Eventually, it gets boring. And as much as it's probably bad for TV ratings, for all we know, because they don't have that.
It's great for baseball.
It's great for baseball.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah,
who would have thought in 2010 that trade of Zach Greinke to the Milwaukee Brewers, bringing back Alcides Escobar and bringing Kane to Kansas City would pay out so much? Kane might be the MVP right now in the playoffs, the way his defensive play has been. And he went 4 for 5 in a baseball game. George Brett was the last guy to do that, and that's incredible. I mean, to go 750 in a baseball game, that's pretty impressive.
It's the Billy Bean plan of stats. You have to look at on-base percentage.
But is this the anomaly, though? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but is this the anomaly? Is Kansas City Royals this year the anomaly? You look at how much big money, big business has succeeded over the last couple of years. Is there any chance that this is an anomaly, or this is a fluke in terms of their success and how hard it is for a small baseball market team to do as well as the Kansas City Royals? Are we maybe going a little bit too far and thinking too far ahead with this team, considering how successful they've been?
Sometimes it doesn't take the best players, it takes the right players. And so far, they've managed to get it done every single day. Like, I mean, it seems like even if they're not a big home run hitting team, someone always comes out. Eric Hosmer will just hit it, and then they'll walk off. And you're like, how did that even happen?
Yeah.
But
a superstar team rather than a team of superstars.
Yeah. Exactly, right. And they just find a way to do it. I mean, you see in 2007, the Colorado Rockies blew it past everybody. They got to the World Series, and unfortunately, as you're mentioning, when it comes down to the best teams, they did get swept against the Red Sox. But I think baseball is bound to see that Cinderella story just succeed, and I think the best contenders right now could be the Kansas City Royals, because they find a way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I agree with that, but at the same time, the Giants, the Cardinals, like I said, these guys have been doing it for years. And if the Kansas City Royals want to step in and beat these guys, they have to do it with more than just the small ball, for sure.
Yeah, you definitely, when you're saying the National League, if you look at the real contenders, I think it's the San Francisco Giants. I mean, you can't go against that pitching. That pitching is unbelievable. And you have Tim Hudson. Tim Hudson's never been past the NLCS or ALCS in his career, but his sinker ball is on point right now, and teams can't get it yard with him. He's really shutting them down.
Well, if you're a fan of Kansas City, you're enjoying the playoffs. You're enjoying baseball in October. But if you're a Montreal Expos fan, you kind of miss it. You miss having baseball in Montreal. We've heard so much discussion. We're shifting gear a little bit to find out if Montreal is a pretender or a contender in getting baseball back. You hear so much of the media, and this, guys like Warren Cromartie and Anakin Slade and a few others who have really been out there and supporting Expos Nations. You see people traveling for games. It really is remarkable. At the end of the day, is Montreal a pretender or are they a contender when it comes to bringing back Major League Baseball to this city?
Well, Adam, I wish that they can get a team back. I mean, I grew up in Montreal. I want to see them get a team. Unfortunately, realistically, I believe that they're a pretender. And it's because, first of all, they need $355 million in budget, like in government funding rather, just to get the ball rolling, and then they need private investors, and it'll go over like $1 billion just to get something going. They need to get a stadium. Where are they going to put it? Who knows? They have ideas, but ideas have been flowing around for 10 years. It's September 29th. Made 10 years.
Yeah, the 10-year anniversary that the last game was played.
Yeah.
Right, and how much has happened since? I mean, also you got to consider like the last 2 seasons. They played 22 games in Puerto Rico.
Right. But in all fairness, though, George Gillette is a perfect example. Now, mind you, he came in with the Habs, who were a lot more established, etc. That's fine. I concur with that. But there is an opportunity here for this team to make money. There is an opportunity for baseball to grow in Montreal.
Absolutely.
It's not all doom and gloom, especially when you think about how the owners have become billionaires, no longer millionaires. And I think that there's a need here. I think that there's a generational want and desire for that 40, 50, 60 age group to bring their children to a baseball game. I think there's absolutely a need. So I think they're contenders, actually, with regards to bringing this team back to Montreal.
The city of Montreal is starving for a sports team in the summer to cheer for. You take a look at the Montreal Impact, the Montreal Alouettes. No disrespect to those teams, but they're not a top-tier sports franchise. And if you had one in Montreal, under the perfect circumstances, I would have to say, they need an outdoor stadium, but the broadcast revenue in the MLB these days, it's through the roof. And at this point, when they redistribute the wealth, it helps out all the teams.
But there needs to be a commitment.
Right. And you take a look at the Royals.
Absolutely needs to be a commitment from the people.
But again, exactly, where are you going to put the baseball puck? You're going to put it where the Hippodrome was, or you're going to put it in Griffintown?
It's far away.
You have to get it. Well, if it was in Griffintown, it would work. I mean, you'd get all the corporate suits to come out of there and go to a Cinq set and go to a Major League Baseball game. That would work 100%. If you're going to put the stadium into the Hippodrome, you're in the same problem you have with the Olympic Stadium. And now, what team are we going to get? Are we going to get a relocated team, or are we going to get an expansion franchise?
Bud Selig did say that there's not going to be an expansion. He's not going to be the commissioner starting next season, so a lot of things can change. We don't know. But at this point, it does look like it could be the Oakland A's, who are a great team, honestly.
Realignment, yeah.
Tampa Bay, they have a terrible ballpark, but apparently there's been a lot of good signs that they might get a new one.
Yeah, but Tampa Bay's got a lease signed till 2027, and they're going to be stuck there in Tampa Bay. They got to pay the moving fees, they got to pay the demolition fees of that stadium, and any unpaid bills that they have to do for that stadium. That's a lot of money for another dump like the Big O.
And the commitment doesn't only revolve around management. It doesn't only revolve around ownership to finance. I think there's a commitment from the people, too.
Fans,
yeah. You know, if you take a look at the footage of the last couple of games in the Olympic Stadium, it was a joke.
But you got to remember,
I mean, it's bad. But I believe that because it's been gone, that good old saying, you know, you only miss,
You only miss it when it's gone.
Right, you miss it when it's gone. I think that definitely applies here, and that's one of the reasons that proponents that I believe will be one of the reasons why baseball will see success.
I mean, they had 96,000 people show up over 2 days, and obviously, yeah, you don't know what you got till it's gone. That's why a lot of people showed up. I was there, and I was jacked about it. I was really happy to see it. But at the same time, even if you
can you sustain that?
That's
the question. Can you sustain that for that long?
How good is the team going to be? If they do get one of those teams, or if they end up being a small market team like they were, I mean, look at it this way: the Houston Astros are about $45 million. That's what their payroll is. Zach Greinke gets paid $28 million a season.
Wow.
So now you think
one player is
it failed the first time.
Let's not compare with the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros are the joke of the Major League Baseball right
absolutely.
now. So
we don't want Montreal to be that.
Yeah, exactly. So you want the team to do well.
But you take a look at the Toronto Blue Jays, their payroll is $130 million. And what they've done is they've marketed the entire Canadian fan base. They've gotten people from Vancouver, people from Saskatchewan.
Similar to what the Raptors have done in basketball,
exactly.
Right? With the North and their kind of.
And I think Montreal can get their hands in that, and especially the people far east, you know, with the Nova Scotians and New Brunswick. They have to market it in a way that it's for all Canadians.
The Blue Jays are not getting the attendance, though.
The only way that it's going to work, though, if Montreal were to get a baseball team, would have to be the Tampa Bay Rays coming to Montreal or getting that spot in the AL East realignment, because you need that market of Toronto. You need that battle to have that the countrywide battle. You can need the Toronto. You need the Boston Red Sox. You need the New York Yankees to come into town. Yeah. You need those fan bases to come here.
Final remarks to you, Jesse, about the Expos. Are they pretender or contender?
Total pretenders, unfortunately. Yeah. I don't see how they could find a way to go with the league the way it's going right now. I mean, $235 million is what the payroll is for the Dodgers, and they're still falling apart. So you think about if the Expos can come back, if they would still be the Expos, if that would be the name. Who knows? I mean, it really depends. I mean, who's going to own them? Who's going to put the money in to sponsor this franchise to actually be a success? And how long is it going to take before they're playing in Puerto Rico again because everyone lost faith in them?
Too many unanswered questions. Stay right there, gentlemen. After the break, it's the spread segment. We're taking a look at your picks. You know what it means. It's Thursday night, and we've got them. Don't go anywhere. All that and more, all right here on Read Between the Lines. It's Thursday night. You know what that means. We've got your predictions on all sports to find out who we think are going to win some key matchups. We invite you, as always, to join us on our social networks and let you know what you think. All right, we start with professional hockey. Habs, Bruins, huge rivalry. What do you have?
It's the Habs home opener. I think they're going to come out strong finally. With Tuukka Rask and Carey Price in nets, under 5 goals for sure. I have the Habs taking it 3-1.
A lot to prove from last year as well.
Absolutely.
With what happened in the playoffs.
Boston's going to be enraged.
All right, college football, huge matchup. Florida State, Notre Dame, Saturday night. Big game of the night?
Absolutely. We got number 5 Notre Dame beating number 2 Florida State. I got Notre Dame take the points at 12.5 points. I think Everett Golson plays a heck of a game and beats Jameis Winston and that Florida State team.
How can we not ask our baseball insider his pick to win the World Series? Who do you got?
I got the San Francisco Giants. I don't see them losing. I mean, their pitching staff is phenomenal. They seem to win every 2 years. 2010, 2012, 2014 seems to be the right thing. They got the same coaching staff. It's going to be tough to beat Madison Bumgarner right out the top.
I agree. I'll start first, gentlemen, with my picks. I've got the Giants, I've got Notre Dame, and I've got the Habs. Omar.
Obviously, the Habs 3-1, like I said. I think the Giants are going to take it. The Royals, the bubble is going to burst eventually. And finally, I'm going to take the Irish.
David.
Well, you got the Irish. We're going to have a pretty easy cast. I'm going to take the Irish. I'm going to take the Habs because it is the home opener in Montreal. It's tough to beat. And I actually do love the San Francisco Giants.
Obviously, I'm taking the Giants. I'm going to take Notre Dame. And I think the Habs are going to have a big first period finally.
You heard it here first. Join in. We want to know your opinions. And, of course, join with us on our social networks. Stay with us after the break. My rant is up next. And believe me, you don't want to miss it. You may have heard the name Hope Solo, and for the older generation, no, this has nothing to do with George Lucas. Hope Solo is a star American soccer goalkeeper recently under scrutiny for being named to the country national team. The kicker? Solo has recently been named to the team and allowed to continue playing despite awaiting trial on 2 counts of misdemeanor domestic violence. We've already seen this situation be mishandled by the NFL all season long, with a seamlessly endless string of wrong decisions made by players and managements alike. Players get involved in legal issues, and the league tries to sweep them under the rug and let the players play, only to eventually crumble at the feet of the merciless public. While jerseys are being pulled from shelves and set on fire, Ray Rice may never play again, and Adrian Peterson, the best running back in the game, is presumably out for the season as he considers, and what they consider, disciplining his son. While we definitely don't condone their actions, it must be noted that Solo continues not only to get a free pass, but support from her bosses, despite complaints from her very own teammates. Now, when the decision to suspend Rice, Peterson, and others were made, we heard statements such as, regardless of the legal outcome, we don't condone this type of behavior from men who are supposed to be role models. On the contrary, U.S. Soccer President Sunil Gulati actually tried to rationalize the situation by saying, based on that information, U.S. Soccer stands by the decision and legal process unfolds. If new information becomes available, we will carefully consider it. Basically, disregarding the charges, and while this was made some headlines, it has nothing to do, and it is nothing in comparison to the crucifixion of Roger Goodell for his handling, or shall I say, mishandling of the Ray Rice situation. So what's the difference? How is that fair? Is it because the thought of a woman punching her 17-year-old nephew and tackling her aunt isn't horrifying/shocking as the Ray Rice video? Is this the moment where we have to ask ourselves, is this really gender related? Really? In the year 2014? It certainly seems that way. And we ask you to read between the lines. Until next time, I'm Adam Reid. Thanks for being with us.
Adam Reid's wardrobe is provided by Carve Clothing, available at carve.ca. Salon services courtesy of Glam Atelier, La Maison de Beauté. Catering services provided by Season Dreams by J. Anthony.